Corvin Haze Lord Hay. This is Normal Boring Dylan. Episode 2. Just barely not mean. Dylan never liked road trips. But this wasn't exactly a road trip, was it? It was a 3-hour drive to a city none of them had ever been to. And now here they were, a loose herd of college acquaintances, roaming a mall so big it felt like it should have its own airport. He wasn't sure whose idea this was, but there was an odd freedom in walking through a place where nothing was familiar. He had no obligations here, no routines to maintain, just an entire day to exist. And apparently, to try not to be mean. It happened first in a bookstore. Dylan wasn't even looking for anything. He was just running his fingers over the spines, appreciating the texture. Then came the guy. A too loud, oddly enthusiastic man who radiated the kind of energy that made you brace yourself. "Oh man, that one's a classic." The guy pointed to a book Dylan had just touched, nodding sagely like he was the author himself. "Have you read it?" Dylan glanced at the title. How to Win at Everything Without Even Trying. No. "Oh, dude, it changed my life." Dylan could feel it bubbling, the sarcasm, the dry, effortless counterpoint that would shut this conversation down in a second. But he stopped himself. Not today. Not here. Instead, he just nodded, neutral, safe. But his face betrayed him. The guy's eyes narrowed. "Whoa, what was that look?" Dylan sighed. "What look?" "That look. Like you almost said something, but you didn't. Like you're about to roast me, but you held back." Dylan opened his mouth, closed it, exhaled. "I was just thinking about something else." Right, the guy said, unconvinced. He clapped Dylan on the shoulder. "Hey man, I respect it. Restraint. It's a lost art." And just like that, he was gone, leaving Dylan standing there, gripping the book like it might explain his own brain to him. Then there was Corvin Lord Hayes. Dylan first saw him near a food court, leaning against a railing overlooking the first floor. Something about him stood out, even in a crowded mall. It looked both out of place and exactly where he belonged. Like he had walked through the wrong door, but decided to own it anyway. "Yeah, it do be like that sometimes." "Hey," Dylan found himself saying. He wasn't sure why. Lord Hayes turned his head slightly. His eyes had weight. Dylan felt himself hesitate. Never mind." Lord Hayes smiled. Just a flicker of something unreadable, then turned back to surveying them all. That was it. Nothing dramatic, just a strange, momentary awareness. Later, in the clothing store, Dylan almost tripped over a mannequin. He caught himself on a rack of overpriced jackets, trying to act like nothing happened, when he saw him again. Except was it him? Lord Hayes was standing by the scarves, examining one like it contained the secrets of the universe, which it did. But he looked different. His hair seemed longer, his posture looser. Dylan frowned. Wait. Lord Hayes turned. But it wasn't the same face. It was similar, but the energy was off. Dylan hesitated. Have we met?" The man smirked. "Maybe." Then he draped the scarf over his shoulder like a royal decree and walked off. Dylan watched him go, something unsettled pressing at his ribs. And then it happened again. By a massive fountain, Dylan spotted another version of him, or at least another someone who shouldn't be the same person, but was. This time, Lord Hayes was sitting with a small cup of sea-salted caramel, honey, gelato, eating it like a philosopher pondering the depths of existence, which he was. Dylan sat down a few feet away, pretending not to look, but of course, Lord Hayes noticed. "You again," Dylan muttered. Lord Hayes raised an eyebrow. "Me again?" Dylan squinted again. "You're not. You weren't," he sighed. "Are you the same guy from earlier?" Lord Hayes considered this like it was a deep question. That depends. Do you feel like the same guy from earlier?" Dylan stared at him. "What does that even mean?" A slow, knowing smile. "Exactly." Dylan exhaled sharply through his nose. "You're messing with me." "Not intentionally." Lord Hayes took another bite of gelato. "I just think you're noticing more than most people do. That's a good thing. You should be proud of yourself. I'm proud of you, even if you're not." By the time Dylan rejoined his group, his brain was still turning over everything. The guy in the bookstore, the almost mean moment, the weird multiple encounters with Corvin Lord Hayes, or at least different versions of him. He didn't know what it all meant. Maybe nothing, maybe everything. One thing was for sure. This was supposed to be a normal, boring day, and yet, somehow, it wasn't. Dylan was getting suspicious. Not about anything in particular, just everything. The mall wasn't strange, not technically. It had the same chain stores, the same stale food court smells, the same awkward groups of teenagers hovering near places they weren't buying anything from. It was normal. It was fine. But for some reason, something kept happening. First, it was the magician. Not a stage magician, not someone performing, just a man in an emerald green suit, standing outside a jewelry store, doing sleight of hand tricks with a coin. No audience, no tip jar, just flipping it through his fingers like he was keeping his mind occupied. Dylan wasn't planning to stop, but the man caught his eye, and suddenly, the coin was in his hand. Dylan blinked. "What the?" "Keep it," the man said, giving him a knowing look. "I think you'll need it." And then he walked away. Dylan turned the coin over in his fingers. It wasn't normal. It was old, like something you'd see in a museum. It had writing on it that he didn't recognize. He decided not to think too hard about it. Then came Corvin Lord Hayes again. This time, Dylan saw him at an arcade, which is where you would usually find him, at a mall. Only, he didn't look like an arcade guy. He was standing in front of a claw machine, arms folded, watching a plush octopus with deep philosophical intensity. Dylan walked up beside him. "Don't tell me you're about to..." Lord Hayes held up a finger. "Shh." Dylan fell silent. Lord Hayes stared at the machine. Then, he moved. One smooth motion. A quarter dropped into the slot. A single button press. No adjustments. No hesitation. The claw descended, grabbed the octopus. Perfectly. Dylan stared as the plush toy dropped into the prize slot. Lord Hayes picked it up, handed it to him. "Here," he said. Dylan slowly took it. "You just How did you? Lord Hayes smirked. We get one perfect moment in life. That was mine. And then he was gone. Again. It's about right. Then the perfume lady. Dylan was just walking past the fragrance counter when a woman materialized like an assassin blocking his path. You, she said. Dylan pointed at himself. Me? She nodded once. I have exactly the scent you need. Dylan had no idea what that meant, but before he could protest, she held up a bottle. It was black, unlabeled. She spritzed it onto a card and handed it to him. Smell? He did, and instantly something shifted. Way off in the distant corner of the perfume store, he could hear a lady saying, Perfume oil? Perfume oil? I promise you, you've never smelled anything like this before. It wasn't a normal scent. It was familiar, but not like a memory he'd almost had, but couldn't quite reach. The perfume lady watched him closely. You feel it, don't you? Dylan stared at her. What is this? She smiled. It's what you already know, but haven't realized it yet. Dylan slowly set the card down. Okay, sure. That makes 0 sense. The perfume lady just gave him a serene nod. You're on the right track. Then, like she had never been there at all, she vanished into the crowd. Dylan exhaled. What the hell is this day? His group was ready to leave. 3 hours back to campus. Everyone was talking about what they bought, what they ate, what a fun, simple trip this had been. Dylan just stared out the window, holding the plush octopus, the old coin in his pocket, the scent of something unknowable still lingering in his mind. He had a feeling, a small, nagging certainty. This wasn't over. Something had started today, and whatever it was, it wasn't stopping anytime soon. Perfume oil?